today. It's going to be a great episode. I can already feel it. I've got my friend here, Matt Johnston from Guide Social. He is like Mr. Video, and I'm really excited to have him share some of his insights and what he's seeing happen in the world. He's an adjunct professor. He does a lot of coaching. He's just all over on social media. I got the privilege of meeting Matt originally at Social Media Marketing World, and I'm really honored to have him on here as a guest. So Matt, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Valerie.
Yeah. So I'm sure I left a few things out of that, but do you want to give people a little bit of an overview of what your focus is specifically in the online space and what you're doing with your agency?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I've been in online video for a very long time. I was sort of an early pioneer in it when I was not an entrepreneur, and I was running big video programs at some of the really big publishers back when online video was just sort of starting to become a thing, like back in 2015. And now I help people leverage all that stuff to actually make money as entrepreneurs. On the agency, we mostly make video ads for companies, and we do a little bit of organic. But on the coaching side, I teach money to make money with video. It's kind of all that it comes down to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you say like way back when, and it's only 2015, a
I know,
few
yeah.
years here. But I mean, people have been preaching this in the digital marketing space for years that, video is where your focus needs to be and that it's only going to get bigger and bigger. And now we've seen that happen. I think the rise of TikTok and Instagram Reels and all the short form space has really just kind of taken video to a different level. So yeah, that's amazing. Thanks so much for giving that background. How have you found yourself innovating to keep up with all the changes that happen in the online space, specifically around video?
I think the first thing that's important to think about is that it's not important to innovate to keep up with changes. And I think this is where like a lot of people screw up and where a lot of misplaced focus is.
Mm,
Here's the thing. Like, you have to ask yourself, the first thing that you should do before you make any sort of content online is ask yourself why you're making it. And there's a lot of folks out there that are teaching how to make content, and there's no why. Like, what is the purpose of that content? And social media has created this world where we create content and then we get really obsessed with the idea of creating content to that improves or gets seen more. And then the key metric that we look at then is how much is it seen or how much is
mhm.
it engaged with. And that's the most important thing, and that's like the key metric. And that makes sense with the psychology of humans because we're hardwired, maybe soft wired, but it might as well be hardwired, that
Sure.
to be obsessed with validation. Like we need our personalities to be, we need to be validated as humans at all times. And when people are watching us en masse or liking our content en masse or sharing it, that gives us personal validation. And so we keep making more content. And then there's all these other coaches and stuff and like consultants and like publishers and stuff that show up. They're like, how to get more views and how to get more likes and like how to get seen more, and do you want a secret to get more views? And but none of those things, I mean, it's only going to make you feel better about yourself. So if this is a hobby, great, like go for it. Like if that's what you want to do, is to get more views. But if you are doing it for marketing purposes,
Right.
the only real metric that you can look at is sales and revenue and leads into your business. So the idea of keeping up with trends has to be like purely in line with that. So to be honest, I don't put a ton of effort into like keeping up with trends, because one of the things, but I mean, of course I do like ride new algorithmic waves to try to like
Sure.
get seen more, because I've already built out like the marketing back end of it. But at the same time, I think that when uh, like all the stuff that I was like pioneering on in like 2014 and 2015, when I could put up a video organic on Facebook and have it get 5 million views in a day, which is impossible now. I mean, all those lessons are the same. I mean, because human psychology hasn't changed, and what people want to consume maybe has changed a little bit, but generally it's the same.
Yeah.
It's essentially the same. So really, we're always trying to hack the system, and hacks are sexy because hacks lead to quick results, and quick results lead to a feeling of gratification. But there's not, so what we do with with my content organically, at least in a vacuum, is that we look simply at what's performing better or worse, and we look for smaller changes based on what we're seeing in the algorithm. I try not to pivot a lot though within what I do to fit like different things that are happening. Does that make sense? I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that every time that I'm having a conversation about social media, that we're actually talking about why we're doing it, because
Yeah.
there's a real toxic side of social media that and it's not necessarily bad people, it's the dopamine triggers in our brain, and I worry about us. um I really do, so I want to make sure that we're on there and creating for the right reasons, and not the wrong reasons, if that makes sense. So that's like the theoretical, like really poor answer to your question. I'm just
No,
getting
no,
off
I
my
mean,
chest.
you just said so many great things. And I think like, a lot of people come to folks like you and me and they want those. I mean, in our space on the back end, we'll call them vanity metrics, where it's like, it's just for show. It's just going to make you feel good, but is it actually driving results? Um, and so
Yeah.
when I'm talking to clients, we're talking about how's the content performing. Sure, we're looking at the social metrics, but I'm also saying like, okay, well, how much traffic is this driving to your landing page? And let's take a look at like, how many email signups are we getting? How many of these other things that are going to push them into your sales funnel or further in your sales funnel is the content helping to support versus just how many people hit like on it? And so I think like having that higher level view of what you're doing and having it truly focused towards, hey, is this going to help you drive sales? If it's not, why are you doing it? And I think there's reasons to put content out that isn't all just about sales, because social is social. But no, I think you said some really great nuggets in there. So,
Yeah.
and I think you're right. There is a dark side to social that, I mean, I don't know about you, but I go through seasons where I'm very dark personally on my social activity. I pull away. I'll take major breaks personally, um, just because there is some toxicity if it is consuming your whole day. You have to be really careful about your mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't I don't consume it. I only post, and it's mostly my team that does the posting. So I had a sort of come to Jesus moment a few months ago, where I realized that every time I went on a social platform and scrolled through my feed or whatever, I would get massive imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty protective of my mindset. And I just realized that it was actually doing me no good.
Yeah.
And it was only damaging me. And I'm pretty woo woo when it comes to this stuff. I think that your thoughts become your reality, and you have to be really careful of your inputs. So I actually don't consume it anymore at all.
Yeah.
I only post, and my team posts,
Yeah.
because I know that people are out there. And I'm not supposed to be bashing social media or anything. And there's obviously many good things that come from it. I met my wife on Facebook. I mean, sort of. I mean, we went to college together and then reconnected 10 years later through
Oh, that's
Facebook. And
fun.
That's all awesome. That's
Yeah, there's a
all
lot of great
awesome.
things that come from social media. I've seen a
Sure,
lot of it,
sure.
but I
You
do
just
think it
have
is
to
something you have to be careful
protect
of.
yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just the awareness too of just how dangerous it can be mentally is probably the first step. And then actually taking some steps to limit yourself is probably the next. So, all right. Tell me a little bit of like what has been a good personal, professional win for you in the last few years? What have you just been really excited about?
I mean, I think that I've been an entrepreneur for about 6 years or something, maybe 5. I'm trying to think.
It's
So not
first to
really
blend
not
together
too
after a few
long.
years, right?
Yeah, yeah, but really not too long. But um, I think that one of the things that I realized, and it would be great for this is a great message for early stage entrepreneurs to like shortcut past the 3 years that I lost. I mean, like it was
Mm,
all finding myself and I pivoted all the time and all that stuff and all those cliches, but I didn't really understand direct response marketing until really like a year and a half ago or so when I
gotcha.
really like started to learn it. Because eventually you have to convert all this traffic. I mean, even if you have a strategy, and this is our current strategy, is largely what we're doing is we're building lists and we're doing a lot of organic social to try to bring people into closer proximity with the brand. And but then like eventually you have to have direct response marketing happening so that you can start to convert these people on the back end. And learning that was like the key to finally like
Hmm.
unlocking actual monetization with all the work that you're doing online.
Yeah.
um and so I mean, certainly from an info product standpoint, I mean, any revenue that I've gotten from just coaching and type of products has certainly been from direct response advertising,
Hmm.
and then direct response conversion. And on the and I think the big thing on the agency side was um just sort of realizing how good the product needs to be. Like I, like many people back in the day, like started an agency and I went into like an agency program to learn how to build an agency. So like many people, I copied what somebody else was doing, which is what everybody does. And I didn't I there wasn't a lot of like there was no brand there. And it wasn't really as focused on make the product good. It was focused on how to get clients. And that's what everybody wants. And that makes sense because you can't do it if you don't have clients, there's no product. But when the product is really good and when you learn how to treat people, um, and manage human relationships,
Hmm.
you can grow a lot organically, just because news about you as a human being can kind of go far and wide. I
Yeah.
would say the other thing is that one of the things that you sort of learn over time is that the fastest way there's like the two fastest ways to grow your business are one, leveraging and amplifying a charismatic personality, ideally you,
Yeah.
and two, um, having a no-brainer offer that people would feel stupid not signing up for. Like having those two things are like the fastest way to grow your business. So I've done the best. So I try to do the best I can to keep those things in mind as I'm running my business. Like how do I make all the social I'm doing and all this type of stuff? Like how do I
Hmm.
turn that into something that's actually like a machine that I can like build and grow over time, um, with those two things. So I guess
Yeah.
those are just like the biggest lessons that
Yeah.
I've
No,
learned.
that's great. How long have you or scratch that? Have you been in marketing your whole professional career, or did
No, not
you
even close.
evolve into it?
I spent my 20s directing plays in New York City. I was a
Okay.
theater director because I left undergraduate and I just wanted to be in the theater. I wanted to direct plays, and I learned how to teach acting, and I directed theater in New York City for like 7 years. And then I didn't want to do it anymore. And then I went back and I got my master's at Syracuse because I was going to go into broadcast journalism. That's what I wanted
Okay.
to do. And Syracuse is the best program for that. Um, and, uh, and that is where I ended up. We were talking about me going to Las Vegas before this. That's how I ended up in Vegas, because I left that master's program, or I graduated, and then I ended up getting a job producing local TV news in Las Vegas at the time.
Oh, awesome.
And so, yeah, I was in broadcasting, and then I wanted to go online, and because I felt like that was where everything was headed, and I wanted to
Yeah,
be there, and TV was sort of dying, and you could feel it when you were working in TV that it was
really.
dying. And so I left, and that's where I really started the path that I'm on now. However, I was in journalism, so I had my master's in journalism. So I was producing, and then I moved to online video at that point. So I was one of the first video producers at Business Insider, and that's how I started my online video sort of journey. Eventually, New York Magazine poached me to build their video program, and I built their video program. And then Men's Health and Women's Health poached me from there, and then I built up their video programs. And then I ended up at Now This. So I was in journalism for a really long time, specifically in online video, social video journalism, which is like a
Gotcha.
very specific niche, like for that time in
Mm-hmm.
history, 2013 to 2016, right there when things were like booming in the organic, when you could get organic reach on
Right.
anything online before it was
Right.
pay to play. And then I ended up just taking all those things I learned and bringing them into my own business. But yeah, no, I actually like everything I've learned about like marketing has really been in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
It's
And
new.
it's been boots on the ground learning. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
It's
you shouldn't go to school to learn marketing. You won't learn anything.
well, it's so interesting because I went to school to be an architect, and um
Yeah. Yeah.
right place, right time, social media
Yeah.
becoming a thing, you know,
Sure.
I got dumped into it and I was like, oh, I really like this. I'm gonna stick with this. And
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, so it's just funny. It's always fun to hear. I think folks, maybe I have no idea how old you are, but I'm guessing we're probably similar ages.
I'm
Um,
40. I probably got you
you got me
on
by a
that.
few years, but we're still we're within a few years. But we're part of that age group where you couldn't go to school for social media when we were in college. Like that wasn't a thing, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And now people are
Right.
getting degrees in it. So it's just a little interesting, but we also got to
Yeah.
see it in action while it was evolving and becoming a thing.
I
So
don't think you should. I can't imagine why you would get a degree in social media. Like, I understand why people would do it because it just seems like it's a trending thing and you enjoy it. But I can't imagine that there's any professors that would really be able to teach you in any great way. And also, I can't imagine that there's much curriculum that you could. I mean, it's changing
it
so
changes so
much.
fast.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you're better off if you have to go. I mean, like if you want to learn how to use social media, you just go do it,
Hmm.
and get or have an internship. Like I have an intern right now, and she's learning everything about social media from just doing stuff
Hmm.
on social media. But like if you really wanted to go into social media, I would probably get a degree in marketing. But even then, it's kind of tough to find a program that's practical. This
Right.
stuff changes all the time. I mean, I have my own feelings about higher ed and everything, but
Yeah,
you know,
well, we have some mutual friends. I've seen some comments on a few strings about higher education in the last week or so, and you as an adjunct professor, you probably see a lot as well, just of some of the shortcomings and you know how much does higher ed
Well, I
prepare
just
you
feel
for?
bad for the kids because like you can talk about it theoretically all day long.
Right.
But I teach these kids and I talk to them and they don't know how much money they're paying. They're not even connected to it, you
Yeah.
know, and they don't think about it until later. And they're just like they're like a lot of them are unhappy with what they're learning. I feel
Yeah.
like somebody's got to stand up for them.
Well, I mean,
So I don't know.
I feel like I had a great higher education experience, but I also feel like it was very unrealistic to what the real world was actually like.
Yeah, me
I
too.
got out,
I mean,
I got out
it's
and I
you know,
was working in these cubicles, and no offense to the offices and team if you're ever listening to these, but like I was so bored working in the architecture industry. School was so stimulating, creative, all this. You get out and it was like budgets, your rank on the totem pole. You're stuck doing really boring,
yeah,
repetitive work in a
yeah,
quiet gray office
yeah.
that was just so quiet. Yeah, I was like, I need more stimulation. So I feel like I'm using my degree more in the marketing space than I ever did working in architecture, which is a
It's
little
all
strange.
broken, which is why I don't know how to fix it. You know, I mean, everybody has fun in college because you get drunk and go to parties and you don't get a chance to do that ever again.
Right.
And so, you know, and then everybody's like, oh, I love college. I met some of my best friends there. And like, but it's kind of like hidden behind this veil of higher education. It's also
Hmm.
like, okay, like, do you know it's $70,000 a year that you're paying for that? You
Right.
know, does that put it in perspective to you? You know, it's so strange because obviously I have a master's degree, I have
Right.
undergraduate. I went to half of another master's program that I left and I'm still paying for it. And like I did get a lot out of it.
Right.
But man, uh
Now,
like I feel like college needs to be marketed differently. Like if it's
yeah.
going to be more like brain expansion, like brain expansion, you know, like social experiment stuff, like then let's market it as that instead of just
Right.
calling it like we're going to prepare you for the real world. Because I'll tell you firsthand that these colleges do not look at themselves as a prepare for the real world institution. That's just not
Yeah.
how they look at what they do, you know.
Yeah. Exactly.
um I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's difficult.
I've ranted about this before. We don't have to go into this.
Well, do you feel like you've used your theater background in what you're doing now?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, you know, I mean, the agency creates video ads, so I mean, I always will. I mean, obviously, like I know how to tell stories
Mhm.
because of that background, and I mean, but it wasn't just school. Obviously, it was
Sure.
most of it was during my 20s. But like, I mean, certainly, like I direct actors all the time. I write scripts for commercials. I mean, so it's all sort of in that realm, and
Yeah.
100%. I mean,
I
I
just feel like
love having all these experiences.
the
Yeah,
presence on video and the confidence to be behind a microphone and the voice inflection, like I can
totally,
see a lot of parallels
totally,
behind what
totally.
you're trained in to what you're doing now with all the video work you're doing.
Well, totally, and you know, one of the things that I'm trying to do more of is empower other entrepreneurs to be more comfortable on camera and m- more powerful and just better on camera in general and more willing to do it. It's something I'm still sort of fighting to figure out, but I mean, I'm amazing at that. Like if you
Yeah.
work with me, like I can make you confident on camera like in a couple hours. Like uh, so that came from my theater background, like
Yeah.
for sure. And that's awesome. And we're all like little collections of parts from our past and everything. So that's
Yeah.
cool. Um, that's cool. So you know that's why I'm 40 and have only been an entrepreneur for 5 years. I've just had a bunch of careers.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of us are in those same
Yeah,
boats, right? We've all kind of
totally.
had some evolution if we've made it this far in life. So, uh,
Yeah,
as opposed to some of the folks, like my parents' generation, I look at my aunts and uncles, they had the same career like their whole lives. So it's
yeah,
definitely different. But yeah,
yeah.
a lot of us, we've kind of jumped from one thing to another, and you take stuff with you from every experience. So yeah. If you were to give any advice to someone who's just really thinking about starting to embrace video more, what would you say to them?
I mean, the first thing is you have to figure out why you're doing video in the first place.
Okay. Assuming
So
that they know
that's
that.
that. Assuming that they know that, I would focus on YouTube first. Because I
Okay.
think that's the biggest, I think that's the single biggest opportunity in marketing, because it's search based, it's intent based. So if you're going to start doing video and you want to do it somewhere and you want to make an impact on your business, the best thing to do is to start a YouTube channel and to sort of dig into how to make that work and get discovered there, because people are going to be searching for what you do on YouTube, and it's going to allow you to create this really good match between your content and what they're looking for, which is just not the case on like Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Like I'll do Instagram reels and they'll get like 10,000 views and I'll be like, I don't even know who these people are.
Right.
I mean, and I still do it, but it's part of a larger content strategy. But I start with YouTube as my first sort of pillar, and I can share with you, if it would be helpful, I'll share with you all the sort of we've made a lot of sort of discoveries and we've done a lot of digging into what's working and what's not these days,
Yeah.
and on these different platforms. Because we started one way and we've really changed the way that we are doing things right now to complement like what we're seeing work and what we're seeing not work so well. One of the things
Mm,
was I was doing, I mean, I've always said YouTube first. And so I was at first, I was creating a YouTube video every single day. I was just going live, really simple. Like I was using Wave,
yeah.
which is the best platform in
Yeah.
my
I'm a
opinion
fan
to
of
go
fan of
live
Wave
on.
as well.
And you can go live everywhere at once, and they have the best live platform in the back end. So I was just going live everywhere, including YouTube. Put a great thumbnail on it and description, and like I was putting that there, and then my team was cutting that up into reels, and so I'm doing one of those a day, and now
Yeah.
so we're posting 4 reels a day on every platform out there, and then the one YouTube video. And it's great, but what we started to see is that like I wasn't seeing anything really move the needle on the YouTube side,
Mm,
because obviously it takes time on YouTube, but at the same
sure.
time, I think around the same time I was reading Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point, which is
Mm,
this great book. Have you read that?
yeah. Yeah. It's been
So
a few years, but I've read
I
it.
was reading Tipping Point. You should read it again. I just read it twice in a row. I was like,
Okay.
I got to get this stuff in my mind. And if you do social content online, you should like study that book, because it's literally the science of virality if you dig down into it.
Yeah.
But it started sticking with me, no pun intended, because stickiness is the biggest piece of it. So I was thinking about why the YouTube content wasn't really taking off. Obviously, I wasn't putting a lot of work into it. I mean,
Sure.
I feel pretty comfortable with my own like ability to talk and be interesting and have charisma and good ideas and stuff, but that's not necessarily enough to like move the needle if you're not creating really purposeful content on YouTube. I was really
Yeah.
just like taking a topic and teaching something or ranting for like 10 minutes. Usually I
Yeah.
was teaching, it had like a flow and it had a
Sure.
point and I could put a good thumbnail on it, but it wasn't moving. And then I was trying to think, I was thinking about it, and then I thought again about Malcolm Gladwell, and I thought about the middle section of the book is all so essentially, if you haven't read Tipping Point is about this. It's sort of it's the science of why social epidemics happen, i.e., like why things go viral or get passed en masse. Why ideas go viral, essentially.
Right.
And there are three main pieces to it, but the middle piece is stickiness. And there's this great section of the book where he talks all about the inception of Sesame Street and Blue's Clues, and he talks about the science and testing and research that went behind constructing an individual episode of Sesame Street, and how they would monitor how much the kids were, like, when the kids were tuning out and when kids were paying attention, and then they orchestrated that to make it so that kids were constantly paying attention. And they
Right.
found some interesting things which are more interesting for education than anything else. Like, for example, they thought kids would just zone out when they watched video, or like that they would tune out when things were less interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But really, kids are actually, what they found is that kids were actually extremely active viewers, and they tuned out when they didn't understand things, and they tuned in when they were engaged and involved. And then they started to orchestrate the whole thing. So an
Wow.
interesting tidbit in there um, about how when they first did Sesame Street, they didn't have the human adult characters and the Muppets in the same scenes together, because child psychologists were putting a lot of pressure on them to not put them together, because they were worried that it would blend children's ideas of fantasy and reality.
Mm.
But it turns out that tanked everything, because the adult sections would come on and kids would be completely disengaged. So they finally put them together. They actually filmed whole episodes like that, and kids were just not having it. It was really,
Interesting.
really kind of fascinating. But the lesson that I got out of that for YouTube, and that what I realized, is that the videos that I was creating weren't sticky. Like, there wasn't
Mm.
that sticky storytelling thing inside of it, because we're hardwired to tell stories and to listen to stories and to pay attention to stories, because that's how we make sense of the world when we're coming into this world. Like, when we're 2, 3, 4 years old, that's how we make sense of the world, is that we create stories. There's
Mm-hmm.
another interesting point and tipping point where there was this huge amount of research and science done around this one little girl who she would talk before she went to bed. She did little monologues before she went to sleep, and she would describe what was going to happen the next day or whatever, and she would
Mm.
turn it into a story with
Yeah.
relatively advanced whatever. And then they did a ton of research around that, and that it sort of presses in that we are taught at a very early age that stories are how we make sense of the world, and then those stories create stickiness. And so it made me realize that really I wasn't telling stories or doing enough storytelling, or giving frameworks for storytelling within any of these videos. And so they weren't sticky. So I was sort of relying on some off the wall opinion I had, or some really good teaching moment I had to do the work,
Yeah.
rather than creating stickiness. And so now, instead of doing that every day, we're creating more like 1 or 2 YouTube videos a week, and trying to have every video have like one very specific piece of DNA that makes it more shareable.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important, because ultimately, that's how YouTube works. You actually don't have to create a ton of content on YouTube. And so now we're divorcing YouTube from all the other content that we're
Mm.
doing. We're creating little shorts on the yeah. And so, of course, like, one of the lessons we're learning, of course, is that every platform is unique. But I think that it's more important to do it than not do it.
Yeah.
So yes, if I went and I made individual Instagram reels just for Instagram, and then I went and made individual TikToks just for TikTok, I mean, they would perform better, but like, that's not sustainable over a long term. So we're
Yeah.
still doing this sort
Yeah. You
of,
have to balance it.
long and cut strategy on those platforms. Whereas YouTube, since it's the most important to me, we're doing this sticky strategy. So that's what I've learned. I feel like that's
That's
kind of useful for
wonderful.
people to know, because there's a lot of voices out there. This is based on data, like that I've seen, and
Yeah.
what we're seeing out there for
What you're
sure. And I've
testing and seeing how it
yeah,
performs.
yeah, and I have tons of other insights as well, that we've seen from the data. But those are the biggest, like, broad things that I've seen, and the changes that we've made.
Well, I mean, what you just kind of said in that last sentence or so here, like that, it just made me think back to your talk at Social Media Marketing World and just all of the concrete examples of client videos that you shared, and like you've got the experience to back up what you're saying about video content. So I really appreciate that. So
yeah,
it was a great session too. So if anybody has access to 2022 Social Media Marketing World recordings, you can hear Matt's talk. It was phenomenal. So Matt, as we wrap up here, if people want to learn more about you, video, how to use video to leverage and make more money online, where can they get more information from you?
If you go to mattjohnstononline.com, there's a free training on there you can watch to learn more about how I do what I do and how we use the systems that we have to make more money. And of course, as you know, we're going big on the YouTube channel, so that's always a good place of free information as well.
Great. And we'll link to both of those links here in the show notes. And Matt, thanks again for your time today and just sharing all that tangible wisdom. I mean, you just really broke things down in such an in-depth way. I really appreciate you sharing some of your insider knowledge.
Thanks for having me, Val. Do people call you Val or just Valerie?
You know, a lot of people call me Val. I don't even notice when people call me one or the other. All my family calls me Val. Friends from college call me Val. Anyone that's from the Midwest, they just automatically call me Val. They don't even ask. That's just what they do. So Val, Valerie, I'll respond.
Well, thanks, Val. I appreciate it.
You're part of the family now.
I like it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
If you liked what you just heard, please hit subscribe to make sure you don't miss any of our future episodes. And while you're at it, go ahead and leave us a review. That not only helps us out, but it helps others discover great interviews just like this one.